And we're getting ready. Alrighty. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Super Pac's channel. I'll turn that down just a little bit. 0. Excellent. Alrighty. Hello, everybody. Happy Saturday. Saturday afternoon. Wow, the first Saturday in December. Can't believe we're here in the last month of this year. And for me, this has not been a terribly fantastic year, I have to admit. I've had some tragedy along the way, but happy to see it go, as a matter of fact. But we must move on. A little bit about myself. I am Super Pac Jr. I am an old school gamer who's been playing video games for at least the last 45 years or so. I go back to the old days of even before Atari, back when there was a Super Pong or a Pong handheld thing that you got hooked up to your TV. We're going to do a segment today called Arcade versus Console. I'm fairly new at Twitch at this, so you have to forgive me for some technical difficulties. And speaking difficulties. Today's game. London Lass. Hello there. How are you today? Oh, and I want to give a thank you to JL the Boss 24 for following me. Appreciate that. Thanks for the follow. Let's see. Today's game is none other than. I really don't have to switch the picture at all. It is the picture that you see. It is Pac-Man. Pac-Man, arguably the first mascot that a video game ever produced. It was produced originally by Namco. Over here in the States, it was under Midway. And, well, it goes without saying, when you think video games of the 1980s, you think the early days of video games, this game usually comes up first. Gosh, what can I say? Everything has had a Pac-Man to it. It has been around for 42 years. Namco continues to market this game. What else can I say? I mean, you recognize these guys. These are the 4 ghosts that chase around Pac-Man continuously. And in the order from which they are from left to right, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. That is Blinky, Clyde, Inky, and Pinky. And they each have their own little traits. I'll tell you about that when we actually play the game. But, you see these? You know what they are. That's the beauty of this game. Believe it or not, Pac-Man actually also kind of hit pop culture, if you will. They actually had an ABC Saturday morning cartoon for a while, voiced by Marty Ingalls, if I'm not mistaken. Good Lord. They had, I was thinking about getting pictures for all the things I could tell you about it, but then I'd be looking at several dozen of these. They had a Chef Boyardee canned pasta. They had, good Lord. Many coins have been spent over the years, yes. Tell me about it. Good Lord. A friend of mine actually had one in his back room, his arcade back room, if you will. A friend of my dad's, actually. And, yeah, I spent quite a few quarters on this. And then he went and sold it to the Winn-Dixie, which is down the shopping center from him. Anyway, there was a Saturday morning cartoon. They actually had Chef Boyardee pasta. There was a General Mills cereal of Pac-Man, and a board game, and clothing, and all that kind of stuff. But let's take a look at some of the electronics that came over the years. For example, one of the earliest examples of getting Pac-Man into your home, aside from the Atari game, was this little thing from Coleco. This was one of their tabletop arcades. And as you can see, it had a very similar design to the actual arcade cabinet, with the Pac-Man marquee, the side art, the bezel, the control panel overlay. Fairly accurate, too. I have two of these, as a matter of fact. One that I got from the original days, and one I got a bit later on because the original one, well, is missing a joystick, and some of the stickers are coming off of it. So, eh, but they still work. That's the beauty of it. Now, on today's front of the thing, you can actually go out to, well, I don't know, Walmart, or you can order these from one arcade, and you can actually get your own Pac-Man cabinet. And it's not quite like the original cabinet. You can still find those too, but they're a bit expensive comparatively to this thing. And you get this little stand. You can actually have it two different sizes, one with the stand, one without. And here it comes with a couple of games: Pac-Man, the original, and Pac-Man Plus. That is an unofficial sequel produced by Midway. It's faster and harder Pac-Man. I'm not going to play that today, but I'll tell you that the significant differences are the maze is green. When you hit an energizer, all the ghosts may not turn blue, or the maze may disappear, or the ghost may disappear, or a combination of any of those. And you kind of started off at the speed on the first Apple board. So, yeah, it was faster. Yes, it certainly was harder. I love it, the fact that you can actually see they're having young folks like this playing Pac-Man. Isn't that amazing? It is good to see that they can still market this game more than 4 decades later. And of course, you can still buy newer merchandise, much unlike the Coleco one from yesteryear. You can get this little Pac-Man thing from Microplayer My Arcade, or you can get this little jobby here. This is even smaller representation of Pac-Man. This is from Tiny Arcade, and they dub it as the world's smallest or tiniest arcade game. And it's amazing again, and I have one of these as well, and yeah, they're playable. The one prior to that, by the way, this represents more or less the NES version. This is kind of like the arcade version. And they even have a Hallmark ornament. And this is my little representation of Pac-Man. I built this, good heavens, what year is this? I built this 18 years ago out of a PlayStation kiosk. And it's fully functional. You can play it, turn it on, hit a credit, start the game. In fact, there's me playing it now, as I'm chilling. And originally, this is the beauty. This is why I love trivia. You can find out some really irrelevant, stupid facts. The original game was called Pac-Man, but they quickly had to change it when they tried to market over here to North America, because all they had to do is just draw a little line from the dot of the P to the end of the P, and you probably can guess why they all of a sudden had to change the name. Pac-Man was actually modeled after Paku Paku, which is Japanese verbiage for eating. You certainly do a lot of that here in this game. And we're going to go over the arcade game and stack it up against these console versions. This is the original 2600 Pac-Man. This was designed by a gentleman by the name of Todd Fry, who had something of an unenviable task, if you will. He had to recreate for Atari the world's most popular game. Did he do so? We'll find out. I'm pretty sure you know by now if you've got a little bit of age on yourself like I do. We're going to compare it also to the Atari 5200 version. This was the far more superior version. You can even tell from the art that it kind of looks more like the game than the 2600 counterpart. Of course, you would have to pay a little bit more for it. And of course, you have to get a different console because more people had the original Atari than they did this particular model of Atari. We're going to compare it also to the NES version. Now, this one was produced by Tengen through America, which is Atari as well, but originally was produced through Namco over in Japan. And then we're going to look at the Game Boy version as well, because it was there. It was, everyone had a Game Boy, everyone had Tetris. Well, Namco assumed, and they were by this point directly marketing in North America as opposed to before, everyone has to have Pac-Man. And I'll tell you, no, they didn't. And then we're going to look at the Coleco arcade tabletop version as well. So those are the games that we'll be looking at today. I will say this about Pac-Man, Pez head. It's funny. I've had Pac-Man. Like I said, I would love to show all the pictures and stuff like that. I just don't have the time to do all that. But I do have Pac-Man wind-up toys from yesteryear. They actually had a sponge and soap collection. Pac-Man was the sponge, the ghosts. Yeah. Good heavens. Again, they had clothing, lunch boxes, They actually had from Fleer cards, Pac-Man cards, like baseball cards. And some of them actually were scratch-off little games too, where you actually scratched Pac-Man on the maze, hoping to avoid the ghosts. It was the technology of the time, I guess, to entertain ourselves. And then of course they had other versions of the LED Pac-Man. One was made by a company called Tomy, T-O-M-Y, and they made a rather interesting model. I don't have that to show you, but it looked like a rather depressed Pac-Man. Anyway, let's go ahead and get the emulator started. So I can flip that over to here as I talk amongst myself. Is that it? That is not it. Is this it? This is it. Yay! And now see if I can get this to look correctly on the title screen. So let's see if I can do this right. It's a little big. A little big, yeah. Verticals don't shape well against the back. It has to be horizontal. But it will look pretty good on here, ironically. So this is my Pac-Man cabinet. It's a bezel, or sort of bezel, with the actual game in it. So the object of the game is to eat all the dots. Basically, that's it. You do that and you clear the maze. Watch out for the 4 ghosts there. The one that will follow you all the time, like a shadow, would be Blinky. The one that seems to be faster than the others really isn't, but he'll cut you off in the corner. Speedy, which is Pinky. You got one that when you kind of charge him, he'll actually turn away from you. He would be bashful, and that would be Inky. And then the one who just kind of pokes around in your quadrant of the maze. He doesn't really come after you at all. He just kind of hangs around, and is pretty much a pain in the ass because you will get eaten by him at some point, and that would be Pokey Clyde. So their characters are what they do. Their nicknames are who they are. Dots are worth 10. Energizers are worth 50. Ghosts are 2, 4, 6, and 8. 2, 4. 8 and I'm alright, 1600. And then if you eat enough dots in the maze, you'll get a little special surprise there below the ghost box. That would be usually a fruit, like right there. That's the cherry. Cherry's worth 100. Strawberry's worth 300. 500 for a peach. 700 for an apple, so forth and so on. So let's go ahead and get started. And I'm going to just kind of talk about some of the game mechanics. Most people, when the game came out, they learned patterns. This game was big on patterns. There was even books out there for sale that you could read to teach you patterns. If you've got the Pac-Man the Pac-Man Fever album from Buckner and Garcia, and yes, there's music for Pac-Man. It actually was a top 10 hit too for Buckner and Garcia. The record sleeve would actually show you the maze to help beat Pac-Man, or at least play the game. Wow. All these little things come up as I'm talking about it. Let's go ahead and hit play. I'm going to turn down the music so we can listen to the wonderful, wonderful game. Okay. It would help if I can actually see it. There it goes. I don't usually play this with a thumbstick, I have to admit. So, albeit I am ambidextrous, I play the game right-handed. Because that's just what I've been doing for the last 45 years. Well, 42 years in this case. Okay, there's the cherry. With 100. Now, a lot of people like to do is they like to kind of get the ghosts to come and follow them, kind of like in the Pied Piper sense, and lure them to a Energizer. But you see, they actually do go in reverse a few times per maze. That is called scatter mode. Now, the neat thing about this game is that there are certain functions or certain things that ghosts can and cannot do. For example, they cannot go up the 2 T's here directly around the ghost box. They can go down them, but they can't go up them. That's a neat little escape. And even when they scatter, they still can't go up them. There's a little quirk here, where as long as they're not facing you at any point of this, you can just sit here forever. Unless I do something stupid like move, thinking that the blue ghost was going to come and get me. And they scatter. And ghost still won't hit me. Red one will. So that's kind of a brief pause there, and I've actually have one of my pause screen that I use from time to time. Yeah, see, I screwed that up. One of my pause screen that I use from time to time actually has the ghost just literally dancing around forever for me sitting there. 2 bonus fruits appear on each maze. They last for, I think, 15 seconds. And here we go. As we're early enough in the game, the ghosts are still hanging around in the ghost box a little bit, making it a bit more difficult for me to get all 4 ghosts. I should have waited. I'm going to have to switch to the keyboard if I keep this up. Now, the fewer dots that are on the screen, the red ghost will go into what's known as Cruise Elroy. And that means that he will either match your speed or even in some instances become faster than you. Every time you eat dots, however, you will slow down. Now, the ghost did go up to T there, but he's in scared mode, so he will do that. But notice that they won't come up now. Tunnels will slow down the ghost on all levels. Now, there is a couple of things that do some variance in the game. They actually developed a what do you call it? A speed board, I guess, if you will. It turns Pac-Man into the maximum speed possible for the game. That'd be at speed 256. So they changed a few of the rules for that one. For example, time does not let the ghost come out of the box, only dots. And the ghost will not slow down in the tunnel after, I think, the first peach board. I'm going to go after the ghost first before I hit the strawberry, because it's worth more points. That's basically it. I mean, if you learn the rules of the game, you can probably do fairly well. Or if you do what I'm doing, talking about the rules of the game, then screwing up at every chance you get, then hey, there you go. But it's free. And watching, yeah, I knew that was going to happen. Stupid. Not my best. Not my best. So, when I used to play this, in the arcade game, in the arcades I should say, let's get you first, you're only there for a few seconds. Well, I used to do stupid things with the game, because I kind of figure out the rules of the game before anything else. And I've never learned patterns. As good as my memory is, I'm also mildly dyslexic, and directions do throw me. So lefts and rights and stuff like that, not just the letters and numbers. You see, the red ghost is now much faster than his... there you go. And even though they go in the scatter mode, the red ghost will not necessarily go to his corner, like the others do. That is Cruise Elroy. Every few boards you will get an intermission, such as this one. And it's kind of cute, you know, something to kind of give you a break. Take your hand off the joystick, you know, get away from the machine for a few seconds. Yeah, it's good stuff. All the ghosts come out all at once. Like I said, I'm not really playing for points or anything like that. Just demonstrating the arcade game versus the home versions. As you go maze to maze, the Energizers will have a shorter duration than the previous maze, with a few exceptions. Like right after the second intermission, which would be the second apple, if I'm not mistaken. The Energizers will be at maximum duration, and then suddenly they'll be at really short duration, once again. By the time you hit around the 20-second maze, the Energizers just simply stop working altogether. Okay, something's going on here. Wow, I just lost a ton of frames. Bit of buffering there. Sorry about that, folks. Try it one more time. Hard to play that way, too, I have to admit. So what I used to do when I played this game, I used to do stupid stuff. Like I used to aim for a score and literally achieve for it. You know, talking about like 222,220 or 1234560, something like that. Or 123450. I've never hit 1,000,000 points in this game. I've come pretty close, kind of around 800,000. And I have to admit, I haven't been playing this, regularly like I used to. Like I did, like even 20 years ago. When I hung around when arcades were still non-prize redemption style arcades. It was just a lot of fun to play. And I remember when there was a... too soon. I went to a place called Grand Prix Racerama in South Florida. And I remember when they got an actual Pac-Man cabinet back in there. And it was so good. It was so nice to play again. Like I said, I'm not really aiming for anything. You can see the red ghost is now faster than the blue ghost. Come after me. Come on. I made it. Ha. Ties will get you the point. If you collide with the ghost while eating a dot, you'll get the dot point first. In this case, that was the one that ended the maze. Ooh. You cut around corners faster than the ghosts as well. That's important to remember. They have made, over the years, official and even unofficial Pac-Man sequels. Arguably the most famous unofficial Pac-Man sequel was Ms. Pac-Man. And I have to admit, I love Ms. Pac-Man. I have one in my living room, as a matter of fact. Pac-Man is in my garage, but Ms. Pac-Man's in the living room, so go figure. And of course, it's a harder game. There is no patterns that you can play with in Ms. Pac-Man. For the red and pink ghosts, do not go to the two corners in a scatter or in a start-off. And they only scatter once in Ms. Pac-Man as opposed to the 4 times they do in a Pac-Man maze. The first official Pac-Man sequel is actually called Super Pac-Man. And if you've ever played that one, you can find it in the Namco compilations that are out there. No, he's going to turn. And I will not make it. Shoot. You can actually eat a super power pill. You can actually go through ghosts as a result of that. Of course, you can speed up as well. And you eat keys to open doors so you can get all the goodies that are inside the maze and stuff like that. And it's a much harder game than Pac-Man, I have to admit. But see, Midway started making unofficial sequels, much to Namco's chagrin. And they didn't mind Ms. Pac-Man so much because they recognized that it was a fantastic game. Now, Ms. Pac-Man was originally Crazy Otto. It was actually developed at MIT, which Midway purchased and kind of dressed up and made it what it is that we know now. Namco has purchased Ms. Pac-Man from Midway. And there's a big, long story about that. I knew I was going to do that. And it's an interesting read. If you want to read about it, you can go look up Stephen Kent's book, The Ultimate History of Video Games, and there are several editions of that one. Or his original book, The First Quarter. But Namco and Midway did have something of a tumultuous relationship. While Midway did put out most of their games, and that includes games like Galaxian, Galaga, and so forth like that. Bugger. Oh, give me my... Crap! It is very interesting to read. The game that literally dissolved Midway and Namco's relationship was I have to admit, it's a horrible game. Professor Pac-Man. and it'd give you like which of these three things are the same, which one is different. It's kind of like a Sesame Street type game. Which one is this one's reversed, that type of thing. And yeah, it was dumb. And Midway, I mean, each and every time they came out with an unofficial sequel, we're talking about games like Ms. Pac-Man, Pac-Man Junior, or Junior Pac-Man, excuse me. They even came out with a Baby Pac-Man. Baby Pac-Man was pretty cool, though, I will admit. It was a pinball table plus video game combo. And I used to play that all the time. I love that game. Junior Pac-Man was a bit different. It had no warp tunnels, but the maze was 3 times the size of your screen, so the maze would be scrolling left to right. And pardon my language, but Professor Pac-Man was just utter shit. So we'll leave it at that. But this is the king of games, if you will. This is also, I believe, one of the highest grossing, if not the highest grossing arcade game ever. Again, now the funny part is that in 1980 at CES, 3 big arcade titles were debuting at that point. One of which was this. The other one, another one was Defender from Williams Electronics, and Eugene Jarvis has some incredible stories about the the ride that was. Eugene Jarvis is Defender's designer, and how it almost didn't get off to be played at CES too, because they had to do a couple of things at the last second. And this the game that was really supposed to do it all, the game that was really this was going to be the game of games from Namco, which is through Midway here. Rally X. Yes, not just any Rally X, no, the Rally X. And you're probably asking yourself, what the hell is Rally X? Well, fortunately or unfortunately, you can find it in your Namco compilations. That was supposed to have been the darling of 1980. And, of course, that didn't quite turn out to be. Now, if you ever play Tekken, and you're playing, a competitor, you're playing 2-player versus an opponent in the arcade, sometimes you're on a winning streak. You see these little symbols come up there, and you see some Pac-Man symbols even. You'll find a flag, a red flag with a letter S by it. That is the special flag, and that actually originated from this game, Rally X. And a lot of people don't know that. They're just like, "Oh, what's that? That's great." No, it's just a little flag that you get that would that double your score in Rally X when you hit it, if assuming that you don't hit all the other flags first. A little bit of trivia, a little bit of nonsense. We're gonna switch emulators here real quickly. So I'm gonna take a pause. I gotta hydrate real quickly. So all that playing Pac-Man, warm me out. I will hit pause. We'll be right back. And there it is. The classic for the Atari 2600 coming up. Alright, so Todd Fry, designer rather, for this particular version of Pac-Man. Atari did some rather interesting things throughout their history. They would spend a lot of money getting licensing rights And this is probably the most infamous deal, of course, would be E.T. And that's a whole book on its own. But they did spend a few bucks here to get Pac-Man, and once again they had to kind of rush things, I guess. They made it for quite a few systems, though. I'll tell you that. Let's take a look at the game. There it is. There is the Wonder Maze itself, and there are ghosts there. Trust me, they're more translucent than you would think. What happens is the reason why they flash. By the way, this is literally a hardware limitation, if you will, where numerous sprites can appear on it at once, and so to help do that, they actually flicker. You see that in all kinds of games back in the Atari days, certainly back even in the Nintendo, and even some degrees the more advanced systems at the time, Genesis and Super Nintendo even had that as well. So it's literally a limitation of what can be on a screen at once. The dots themselves were part of the maze; they just simply would disappear after a certain sprite went over them. In this case, that would be Pac-Man. That's why they don't flicker. The Energizers, well, they flash as they are anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Alrighty. So Todd Fry, and you know, he did a lot of good stuff for Atari, he really did. This game isn't terrible, but it is disappointing. And I remember the television commercial ads they had, if you're familiar with Sesame Street lore, they had a character named Mr. Hooper, who was Big Bird's best friend, if you will.
Hello, Mr. Looper.
He was actually in the commercial. And, you know, friendly face, everyone knows who Will Lee, that's the actor's name, is from Sesame Street. And it sold a ton of cartridges. Everyone had Atari. And I don't know if this was more or less a jump the shark moment for Atari 2600, for it came out in 1982, 2 years after the arcade game, and a year before the crash. But it, to me, it is. I'm happy I have it. I still have it. It's in my garage, along with just about all the other classic stuff that I have. But yeah, this is a wonder. Shall we get started? I'm debating, should I just turn off the music? Oh, I gotta turn down the volume. Fortunately, there's no siren or unfortunately, depending on what it is. And as you can hear, Pac-Man's dot eating. The collision is if you've just barely hit a ghost. You just barely hit a ghost. Now I'll demonstrate that. Not in the center of the ghost like Pac-Man. No. Barely clip the ghosts. So you're out there trying to get the dot or the Energizer. Well, I didn't quite do what I was going to do. I got all four. And you're trying to make it and you just don't reach it. Nope. That's worth a whole 10 points. And the mechanics of the game does not follow so much Pac-Man. The only thing they have in common is that you're being chased by ghosts and you're eating dots. Other than that, as far as scoring, well, a dot's worth 1, an Energizer's worth 5, the thing in the center, I can't even call it a fruit, the wafer in the center is worth 10. Completing a maze gets you an extra life. I think that's largely due to the mechanics of this game. And like I said, aside from, yeah, you playing Pac-Man, yeah, you being chased by ghosts, and things of that nature, and all the ghosts have the same type of pattern. They just follow you. Now it does get faster. We'll give that. But like I said, if you're expecting the arcade game, you just, in my opinion, honestly, and it's not just my opinion, honestly, everyone's opinion, it just wasn't there. This suffered a similar fate to E.T. as far as unsold copies, for quite a few of these were found in that desert, pulverized and buried. I have to admit, now my wife says that whenever she played this game, she was asked to turn the sound down. Yeah. Yeah, I'd have to agree, actually. There is one Pac-Man I will play here. Actually, no, I'll take it back. There are two Pac-Man games that will have just as annoying sounds, but in their own way. Now, what's neat about this, of course, you can always change the difficulty level. And let's see. Nope, that's the wrong one. So you can have two-player and then different speeds and so forth like that as you play. And did I used to play 8? I think 8 was like tremendously slow. No, that's just a little faster. And the difference really is how fast are the ghosts compared to you. Yeah, they're quite slower. This is like the junior version of the game. And you're that much faster. Get down. I'm playing with an analog joystick, and it doesn't like to respond. There we go. Keep this up, I'm going to use a keyboard. Oh yeah. So, not really exciting. Let's see. I think I did 4. Well, I'm a trailblazer. And they aren't. Not quite the speedboard mod, the arcade game. Oh, back away. Again, a disappointing game. But if you had an Atari 5200, well, you may not be disappointed. For the Atari 5200, I believe also came out in 1982. Close. 1982, excuse me, 1952, sure, yeah. Oh my goodness. Alright, I'm going to put this turkey out of its misery in here in just a second. Because one of my doggos wants to leave the room. Apparently he can't stand this either. Bink, bink. Oh, what excitement. Yes. And I get an extra life. And you just sit there. And you sit there. And you sit there. And you don't move. Yeah. Okay then. We'll just let that sit there. We're going to change games up here in just a second. Isn't that exciting? Isn't that great? Aren't you glad you stayed around to watch that? You aren't? No kidding. Yes. Far, far generous than the arcade title, how many lives you get, and how you get them as well. I'm going to let my dog out in just a second. I shall return in just a few moments. We're going to take a look at the next doohickey. That'd be, we're going to switch some music here too. That would be the 5200 version of this particular game. I'm going to hit pause. We'll be right back. Alright. Those are my thoughts. Melodically, anyway. Alright. So, here we are. Oh, look at this. I got a first chatter. Hi, I want to offer promotions to your channel, views and followers and things and all that kind of neat stuff. Go to dodgehype.com. Oh, goody. How about that? Well, that's the first time I've actually had one of these. So let me do something here real quickly as I am paused. Pardon me for the... I've never had one of these before. This is fantastic. And what an incredible offer this is, but I'm afraid I may just have to decline this. Figure out how to do that. Be right back. Alrighty, well, I don't know how to get rid of that, so there's that. Oh, goodness. Not expecting that. This little pokey channel here. I have one viewer. Hello. Alright. Let's go ahead and hit the music. Let's take a look at the next game, shall we? Coming up for bids. Let's see, where is it? There it is. It's Pac-Man. Pac-Man for the Atari 5200 version. Now, as you see, it even has a title screen. Oh my goodness, look at that. And you can play 1 to 2 players, just like you could before. Of course, you can change the game difficulty by selecting which fruit you start your maze on. Now, there's a glitch in my little emulator here where the top of it is kind of all garbled, but it's still certainly playable. Awesome. Yes, hello. I have a offer bot there thing, whatever. 2 viewers. Hello there. Thanks for watching. So we're gonna take a look at 5200 Pac-Man. Now we just saw the 2600 Pac-Man. What a doozy that was! Wasn't that excellent gameplay? I mean, it looks just like the arcade game. Pac-Man, of course, being a vertical raster monitor game. Have some limitations, if you will. You go into the horizontal television screen. So let's take a look at it, shall we? We're going to hit start. And pray this actually will work. As a matter of fact, I'm going to switch this out here. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. So far, so good. Well, the munching sound sounds correct. Let's see if they follow the game mechanics. Remember, the T's that are surrounding the ghost chamber, be the one on the top, one on the bottom. Can they go up it? Yeah, well, I'll never find out that way. And even the cherry stays behind when you die. Ooh. One other thing here, the ghosts. Why did they come out a certain direction? Well, they will come out and aim left. You know that. Okay, they went up to T in scared mode. Good. Sounds pretty good. They will not go up to T, however, normal mode. Like that. Now they're going to the scatter mode. They will generally come out and go left on the box unless a reversal had been done or they're blue. Otherwise, they will always go left. And most of the home versions don't follow the reversal rule. They'll come out right regardless. I mean, they'll come out left regardless. Oh, very good. This was an excellent port of Pac-Man. And it has the intermissions just like the arcade did. Very similar sounds. The ghost's eyes will look in the direction that they're moving. Little tidbit things like that. And no one can ever get the Energizer sound correctly. Yep. Limitations on this game. There weren't many. The biggest limitation you had on this game is simply the controller that you used with it. Remember, I talked about the 5200 controller in one of my other streams here. If it worked properly, it was brilliant. It was one of the first examples of an analog joystick. And when they stopped working properly, and it's not an if, it's when they stopped working properly, it was a piece of garbage. It wouldn't center properly. You kept on moving in a particular direction, no matter what how hard you tried to center it. It just wouldn't do. Buttons. See, that didn't give me a tie. Pretty close. Game over. Yay! Try one more time. Let's hit one of the difficulties, shall we? Let's change game difficulty level. I have no idea which one that is. I'm not using their joystick. Of course. Screw it. Now, for the Atari 5200, there also is a Ms. Pac-Man that was released. And I think that's it. I don't recall if Junior Pac-Man ever got released as a production title. I know Super Pac-Man, I don't believe, did either. And it kind of stopped there. We were spared Professor Pac-Man. Mostly the world was spared Professor Pac-Man. That was a Bally Midway title. So as far as Pac-Man does it stand up to the arcade, yes, this one does. Very easily so. This was as close as you got. Other versions that were similar to this was the Atari 800 computer. In fact, I built that one, I believe, first, before this one. There are minor differences between that one and this one. For example, when you get eaten by a ghost, the bottom of the ghost, those little dots there, they will still wiggle. Oh, Pinky, you bastard. Deny me that Energizer. Okay, the siren has gotten faster in tempo. And that means that the red ghost will now start following me regardless, even in scatter. Fewer dots left on the board. Red ghost gets faster and faster, even to the point where, even if you're not facing dots or eating dots, he will still outrun you. Proves Elroy. And the characteristics of the ghost still follow suit. Pinky will try to cut you off at the pass. Blinky will follow you relentlessly. Blue ghost turns away from you. Orange ghost is just there for the hell of it. See, they did a reversal while was it? Blinky is heading back to the ghost chamber, but he didn't come out to the right. So, like I said, little minor rules I don't care about. It does change the game mechanic just a teensy bit. But even Namco's own Pac-Man that they produced for the Famicom, which would translate here to the NES, didn't follow that rule either. So, whatever. I loved 5200. 5200 was not a perfect system. Like I said, the controllers, yeah, but as far as game hardware, there are some wonderful ports made for the 5200. It was comparable to that of an arcade machine, sure. There are some. I knew I was going to do that. There are some absolutely horrible ports, however, for the Atari 5200 as well. Sadly, one of my favorite games, Dig Dug, has a lousy port for it. It was better for the. It was like a more nicer version than say the 2600 version. Just a little bit of fresh tear there. Yep. That's supposed to be a peach, as opposed to kind of almost looks like an old clunky bomb, if you will. And one of the symbols that you find underneath the maze is a Galaxian. If you get much further along, that's my dog barking. If you hear him, I apologize. We have a dog behind us, our neighbor, and he likes to bark a lot and kind of gets Dusty's attention. My blackmouth cur Rhodesian mix. He likes to join in with the chorus, if you will. They like to do that. So far, I'd say no on the Atari 2600, as well as most of the world did. And yes on the Atari 5200. It was, like I said, as far as an early port of the original generation, or first and second generation. Yeah, this one delivered. There you go. See, next peach, and then followed by an apple, and then another intermission, and then another apple, and then I believe the grapes, and then a Galaxian, and a key, and so forth and so on, and so forth and so on. Alrighty. There you go. That's the Atari 5200 version of this particular franchise, Pac-Man. Did a really good job. Really happy with this one. But I go buy a console for this. I have actually been known, back in my yesteryear days of gaming. I don't do this anymore because it's a rather expensive hobby, I have to admit. I would actually buy a console for a game. I did not buy a 5200 for this game. I got it for a variety of reasons. Particularly, it had a really good version of Centipede, as if you saw on last week's stream. But I certainly, after getting the 5200, did go out and get this game. So having said that, let's switch her up one more time. I'll go ahead and put it back into the copy. And let's go ahead and switch emulators one more time. Now, the 7800 never had an official Pac-Man. There is a homebrew version of it that's decent. Do you see a lot of homebrew versions out there, you know, back in the Flash days and everything like that? They certainly had them. But next up, we're going to take a look at the Nintendo Entertainment System. And this came out in 1988 under a company called Tengen. And Tengen was actually a division of Atari. Originally, on the Famicom side of the world, it was produced through Namco, but they went under the name of Namcot, or Namcot, whatever you want to call it, Namcot. I'm not sure why that was such a thing, but they actually produced games directly for the Famicom, and some of the games that they made over there never reached over here. For example, the original Dig Dug and Galaxian, which you can find through emulation. But there were two versions of this cartridge. There was the official gray that actually was licensed through Tengen. But Tengen and Nintendo had a small spat. They didn't see eye to eye on certain issues Nintendo did. For example, if you made a game for the NES, you could not make that same title for 2 years, which effectively monopolized it. And they actually got sued by Atari for that, and Atari won. The lockout chip. There was a lockout chip. If you didn't have a certain checksum as a licensed, it would not play the game, and Atari sued over that as well. Believe it or not, they won that as well. So, hence the unlicensed Tengen games, and they were in black cartridges. And arguably the most famous one, and this kind of started the hate relationship, if you will, between these two companies, was Tetris. Tengen, rather Atari, made the arcade version of Tetris, but they didn't have the home rights to it. But they made a home rights version anyway, and Nintendo said, no, 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 this is ours. Go away. And Nintendo sued them, and they won. And as a result, those Tengen Tetris cartridges could not be sold. Period. It was illegal to sell them because of that lawsuit, because of the judgment, rather. And they had to be destroyed. So the smart people who were in the stores when that happened, they kept them. So we do have it, actually. If you one of my previous streams that have now lopped off, I do have a YouTube page, by the way, where the video on demands from here will now migrate over there, simply because of the fact that they only last here for a week because I'm just getting started. I'm brand new to Twitch, but not to video games. I've been in video games for far, far, far too long. Initializing. Let's see, how loud are you? All the way up. Let's go to from ear busting to -18. Okay. Yes. Let's change the capture. The irony of this one is that there it is. You can see the flickering ghosts because all of them are on the same line, and that's when they flicker here. Let's move up. Let's take a look at this attract mode, shall we? There it is. Okay, well, look, Maze looks somewhat familiar. Let's see. Ghosts are fairly familiar. The red one will always go into the upper right. Pink one always goes to the upper left. The blue one will go to the lower right. The orange one will go to the lower left. That's their scatter. That's how they start anyway. Scoring is still the same as the arcade game. Not much to say. Sounds are fairly comparable. But you be the judge. You tell me if you're watching. This is, of course, 1 or 2 player. This is Tengen's Pac-Man. Actually, Namco. So if you go to your local Walgreens or Walmart or whatever like that, you'll find that there's some mini arcade games from My Arcade. And they have a Pac-Man. And a few other games for that matter. They have Galaga, Ms. Pac-Man. And they're mostly the NES version. They're not arcade versions. But this was pretty darn close, I will say this. Seems a little slow compared to the arcade game, and you're right. Remember we were talking about the raster, rather the vertical versus horizontal. That kind of affects speed perception, if you will. But I promise you, this game does get a lot faster. Go up! Keep this up, I'm going to use the keyboard. And he will not go up the T, nor will they go up this T. Unless they're in a reverse, or in scared. That ghost is going to be coming up. One thing I did not like for this one is the siren. It got real fast too early, and it is obnoxiously annoying. Frame rate drop was standing. But as far as gameplay and all that kind of stuff, and aesthetics and rules, yeah, it did very well. I enjoyed this one quite a bit. There was a product for your NES called the NES Advantage. That was a joystick that sat on top of a table of sorts. Dang it. Because you didn't go up. They had the NES Advantage, which I did put on top of the Pac-Man cabinet, the first one that you see in the chat screen. It's weird seeing them all do that at the same time. There you go. Let's clear the board. Screw it. And it was pretty effective. The one thing about the home joysticks, and even Namco did this with their joystick, which is currently on my second Pac-Man cabinet in the garage, is that they were designed for the left hand because the buttons were for your right hand, and joystick was for your left. Well, not everyone played that way. Didn't bother me so much, but if you remember the original Atari 2600 joystick, the thumb was for your left thumb. The button, rather, was for your left thumb. It only had one button. Only so much you can do with it. It was okay. But if you're playing games like Double Dragon, Kid Nicky, yeah, it was actually quite decent. Ding, 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 ding. 10,000 points extra life. No difficulty setting. Oh, Red, you're fast, aren't you? Yes, you are. You match my speed. All right. And now he's faster than me. Get him. Oh. Yeah, they do that. Alrighty. Not too enamored with the sound, though. I will admit that. So yeah, this one does fairly well against the arcade game. It actually won a couple of awards, believe it or not. You say, how can you screw up Pac-Man easily? Don't know what you're doing. And going to Mr. Fry, who designed the 2600 version, he is a damn good programmer. He really is. He goes back to the roots of Atari. However, he was handed a rather challenging task, again, of replicating the world's most popular arcade game. Probably gonna sacrifice that peach up there. Yep. Went for the 3,000 points instead of the 500 points. Funny that. Now, there is a player who has achieved the perfect score. You've probably heard about him. His name is Billy Mitchell. He's a fantastic Pac-Man player. I'll give him that. He's a very good game player. And I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to give any opinions. If you want to know more about him, you can look him up. There was a movie about him and a gentleman by the name of Steve Wiebe, who was vying for the world's record for Donkey Kong. And it's called A Fistful of Quarters. It's an interesting documentary. And there were some later revelations that came out there that disqualified Mr. Mitchell's Donkey Kong record. And I'm not going to get into nuts and bolts of this. Like I said, he is a talented game player. But, and there's a but. Ooh, Okay, you know, the game sped up quite a bit there. I'm going to leave it at that. What kind of, you know, have been done this all these years, and kind of, you know, not necessarily keeping score, but more or less paying attention. You know, there's a lot of firsts here. You know, a lot of things that happen that, well, we have no precedent. Let's go get this. Oh, don't do that. Okay. I think I know why this is happening too. Because I left something on for my little Fisher-Price computer to worry about while I'm trying to stream. And I do things like that because, well, frankly, I'm an idiot. But how, you know, the squabbles between various companies like Nintendo. And funny, Nintendo and Atari always had an interesting relationship. Nintendo wanted to bring out their console a little bit earlier than what we know of. Oops. And they actually had asked Atari, we want to do a home console. Will you produce it for us? And by this time, Atari, you know, suffering from the ill effects of the video game crash, being that they were kind of like, you know, the ones responsible for it. They're like, no, we're done. We're out of this. We're in the computers now. Computers is the way these days. And Nintendo said, fine, be that way. And nonetheless, though, they did produce the NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System. Okay, I did not intend to do that. I have to play this wonderful... This is a PlayStation 2 controller, and I'm using the left thumbstick. You know what? I just realized I am an idiot. I could actually easily use the right thumbstick and just remap it here for the emulator. But no, I don't think of things like that until it's well too late. Go away, Red. That's because I'm an idiot. But, Nintendo and Atari, like I said, Atari said no, they're not going to do it. Nintendo did, and if you ever take a look at the Famicom, it looks absolutely nothing like the Famicom. But at the time, when it came out in the mid-1980s, it kind of looked like a VHS tape player. No, VCR, in other words. And I know the younger crowd say, what's a VCR? Well, it's 3 letters. Made by JVC. Yeah. Anyway, for VHS. Fan Victor Crown. Anywho, I figured that if it looked like your VCR, it probably would sell a little bit better, because video games were, again, they were bad, they were passé, you know, they were no longer welcome in your home, was the kind of mentality, if you will. And, of course, they were quite successful. They revitalized the video game industry. And what's ironic, Nintendo by this time had exited the arcade industry. Oh, really? Yeah, remind me to remap the D-pad to the right thumb. Okay, Pat. One day, I'll actually think of these things, instead of play clunkily along for the internet to see. Yep. Yep. I am hopeless. Oh, man. I used to say about this game, if you know the rules, you can do quite well. But you gotta know the rules. And when it seemed like I was going to die, I didn't. I just die in other stupid ways. Now the next symbol after this is the Galaxian. If you're playing the 5200 version, it would be the Atari symbol. Which I don't know why, because they actually had Galaxian for the 5200. I guess they just dare to be different. 43,910. Not too shabby. Not too shabby. So, the NES had a fantastic port of Pac-Man. Why not? It came from Namco. Namco was the Famicom producer. Tengen brought it over to America, to North America, I should say. One way or the other. Later on, after years, Namco would indeed produce Pac-Man for the NES here in North America. It is the exact same game, except for a slight alteration on the title screen. Instead of saying Tengen there, it would say Namco. Nonetheless, brilliant, brilliant port. Played just like you wanted to play. Follows about 96% of the rules from the game, as you saw. But then there's the Game Boy. Now, I love Game Boy. Everyone had to have a Game Boy. Game Boy arguably is one of the longest running things in video game architecture. And it continued with the Color Game Boy, and to some degree with the Game Boy Advance, although it would only play the Color Game Boy's games. But the original Game Boy lasted for quite some time. And like I said, everyone had one. And they had color, different colors, transparent Game Boys, pocket Game Boys, mini Game Boys. They had a Super Game Boy for your Super Nintendo, etc. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to hydrate for just a second. I'm going to put back on some gazing. And we'll be right back as I hit pause. I forgot to hit mute. Perfect. I hope I was actually not on mute that whole time. I don't think I was. I hope not. Hope not. If I was, that was just a brief thing. Nintendo for the Pac-Man for NES was fantastic. Did it stack up to the arcade original? Yes. Okay. Now, having said that, welcome back. Let's go ahead and go back to the chat screen. See if this works. A little big. Looks like an LP. All right. So, for our next selection, does it stand up to the arcade, the console, if you want to call it? That's the thing. We call them handhelds. We've always called them handhelds. I would actually attest that they could be a console because they took an interchangeable media. In this case, the cartridge. And there were others like Game Gear took cartridges, Game Boy, the Atari Lynx. And some of them actually, they had handheld versions of their own thing. The TurboGrafx 16 from NEC They actually had a Turbo Express. Took the exact same game you played into your console into your handheld. So, is it a console? Yes, I dare say so. Things like the Game & Watch, things like the Tiger Electronics little LED mini doohickeys. No, I would not consider those consoles because they were just kind of a one-trick pony type deal. But as far as like the Game Boy, particularly Game Boy, because it had such a huge library. And if you want to go in today's technology, the Nintendo Switch, it's virtually the same thing, if you will. You hold it, you have a screen in your hands, you have controls, and you have interchangeable media. So yeah, it's a console, and this particular console you can also hook up to your television. Same thing. In fact, they later on for the Super Nintendo made a Game Boy adapter for your for the cartridge slot, so you can play it on your screen instead of going blind, playing on a little 2-inch screen. So let's take this little 2-inch screen and make it much bigger. This is a Pac-Man Color Special Edition. Now it's playing on the original one. I'll show you why. Even the color version, it's Pac-Man. Okay, you say it all day long. It's still Pac-Man. You're still a yellow circle eating dots being chased by multicolored ghosts in a maze. Eat all the dots. You move on to the next maze. You eat energizers. You eat the ghosts. They go back to the box, etc., etc., etc. The rules don't change. Even in 2600's attempt, it's Pac-Man. No matter how you look at it. It's how well does it stack up to the arcade consoles version? In other words, the template of what Pac-Man is. So let's find out. This is made directly from Namco Home Tech. Namcot, in this case. Namco by this time had been producing games for North America. They started doing so, I guess starting in the mid-1990s. And some of their best-known early examples would be for the PlayStation. They did produce also for the Super Nintendo, whatever like that, and for the Nintendo as well. But prior to that, they were largely going through other producers, again, from Midway, like we mentioned before, especially in the early days, through Atari. Pole Position 2, Dig Dug. They all have Atari's name on it, but they weren't Atari's programming. That was all Namco. Even Galaga 88 and Pac-Mania, which came out in the late 1980s, they were still Namco, even though they had Atari's moniker on it. So, there you go. So let's take a look at this. You have 2 different games to play here. We're only interested in one of them for right now. And let's see, we got... I forgot to turn down the volume, didn't I? Haha, good job. Let's deafen the all 2 of you out there, both of you. You have Pac-Man, and then you have the little thing down there called Pac-Attack. Pac-Attack is a puzzle game, and it's actually a fairly good one. It originated on the Super Nintendo. Basically, it's Tetris mixed with Pac-Man. And you drop blocks, you drop ghosts, and you occasionally drop a Pac-Man with ghosts or by himself, whatever like that. He would eat the ghosts for bonus points, and of course try to do complete lines like if you were Tetris. It's a good game. Is it as good as Tetris? Nah. It's not even as good as Columns or Clacks or Puzzle Bobble. Bust Move, depending on where you are. Let's go to Pac-Man, shall we? And let's see how this one stacks up. And here we go. Okay. There we go. Okay, well, kind of looked like what we saw before. We saw Pac-Man, 1 to 2 players. That'd be neat. Let's pass on the Game Boy to the next player. Okay. Doesn't have much of a track mode, I have to admit, so let's just go ahead and get down to it. Oh my god. Very low siren. Now the ghosts themselves, they're all the same hue or shade of gray, I should say. And aside from the scrolling maze, they decided to make it fairly pixel accurate to the game. Not quite. There are some obvious differences. Play by the rules. Well, they all seem to want to go to the right. Interesting. Nope, they do not play by the rules. They will go up the T. That's disappointing considering it's Namco, the people who created this beast. So, they do the reversal, you just saw that. They do have behavioral pattern, much like their arcade. Oh, it's in stereo too, wow. They do behave like the ghosts that they do, but like I said, some of the rules have been ignored. They come out from the box on the wrong side. And I have to admit, the Energizer, if you're listening carefully, the Energizer sound kind of fades in and out. Oh, that is kind of annoying, I have to admit. Now, back in this day, this was what, 1990, so Game Boy was out for a whole year by this point. It had some technical limitations. Oh, see, so they'll go up this T. Yeah, that's interesting. Blast! Yeah. So they'll go up that T, but not the other. Interesting. Alright. See, I learned something here, too. It's okay. Back in the day, remember, we didn't have much in the handheld business. There were other Pac-Man games to play, but of course they were like the one-trick ponies, like even the Coleco tabletop. Is that a console? I would dare say no. I'm going to include it in here, however, because it was highly purchased. It was actually a nowadays collectible item for your gaming pleasure. We'll do one more because I screwed up there. Not big on the sound. I can't stand the siren. And the Energizer is annoying. Oh, especially when you combine it with other sounds. Oh my god. It's almost like it's affecting ear pressure. Isn't that terrible? I love doing that. Follow Ghost up to an Energizer just to eat them because they know they will reverse. Old school dorkdom. What can I do? I'm already out of Energizers? Yeah, I knew that was going to happen. I was asking for that one. Somebody's at the door. Yep, I do have an Energizer. Wonder if I can do this. Nope, doesn't do it. Okay. Facing an open direction when you come to an end of a lane there. Not bad. Like I said, this is for the technology of the time. Could they have done better? I think so. Considering this is, just because it came from the creative company, in this case Namco, doesn't necessarily mean that Toru Iwatawe rather actually had his hands on it. I would never assume that, but not everyone else thinks that way. They say, "Oh wow, it came from the source. It must be fantastic." And I've seen plenty of examples where that is not the case. Oh, that Energizer sound is actually giving me a headache. I don't know why. I'm just glad, believe it or not, they didn't have it where you see the entire maze all at once. And while that is a bit of a hindrance, when you look at it from gameplay, it would have looked absolutely horrible. See what the intermission looks like. Basic enough. There you go. At least it had it. There are home versions of this game that do not have it. The Atari 800 computer did not have one. That would be, however, in the 5200 counterpart. Of course, the Atari 2600 thing didn't have it either. Nor would the handhelds, of course. Wouldn't see that would be possible under the circumstances. That's good. Thought I could outrun that one. Missed the center of collision, but didn't. So I'll kind of give this one a half mark. A major yes and no. This Game Boy was stereo. People didn't realize that. Sometimes, though, you don't have to be stereo because the technology is there. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. Oh, could you imagine the siren were in stereo if it faded in and out between speakers? Oh. That would be abysmal. Second Peach. This is almost like playing the Junior Pac-Man version. Nobody should be in Cruise Elroy yet. Too many dots. Wow. Wow, okay. Oh, thank goodness. And I'm leaving too many stray dots, I have to admit. Yep. Oh, man. Now, the last one I'm going to play is, I previously recorded because as I was testing it with, Twitch here, it kept on crashing one thing or the other. It either crashed the studio here, or it crashed the game. So I said, you know what? I wanted to showcase it because, A, I loved it. It was one of my dad's least favorite things that I had. And it's kind of a pity because I absolutely loved it. Yeah. Ghosts didn't seem to have the same. They have the same mentality, but they kind of do miss a pointer here. I can't believe I did that. Yep. All right. I think that's a good ending there. Not too bad. 27820. That's not bad. All right. So I'm going to get the media player up here. Coleco was a fantastic company back in their day. They did something. They brought the tabletop arcades, the arcade at home, whatever you want to call them, and they made commercials about it. And they made actually several games. Starting off with Pac-Man, of course, they made Galaxian, they made Donkey Kong, they made Ms. Pac-Man, they made Frogger. Oh, let's see, they made a Donkey Kong Jr., they made a Zaxxon. I don't have those last two, but I do have a lot of them. I have Pac-Man, Galaxian, Donkey Kong, Ms. Pac-Man, Frogger, and another Pac-Man to replace the first one. So, having said that, let's go to the player real quickly. Probably should exit out of this now that I think about it. Bye-bye. Bye. And let's get to this, shall we? some emulators don't like other things running that take up a great deal of resource. And I don't have a super powerful computer, I have to admit. I didn't intend on doing this. I just saw what other people were doing and said, you know what, I've been playing games for quite some time, since 1976 to be exact. And yeah, share with my knowledge. And I actually, as we kind of go into our last segment here, I got to know a few people in the business. I'm not a big celebrity or anything like that, and I worked in retail selling video games, and this was like going to your back in the day, going to your local software, etc., going to your local Babbage's, uh, going to your local even Toys R Us, because games by this point were really selling almost everywhere. But in the case of like Electronics Boutique and Software Etc. and Babbage's, and ultimately GameStop, because that's what all three of them at some point would become, you have to know your stuff. They ask, the customer goes to you, asks you questions because they want your knowledge. They want to know what you know. And back in my day when we did this, we actually got to play with the games and stuff like that from time to time, so we can actually tell you about the game. We could tell you if it's good. We can even tell you if it's bad. And I actually had to work with somebody who would literally not upsell, I should say that, upplay every game. And I wish he didn't, because our return policy was rather liberal back in the day, where even if you didn't like the game, you could always return it and get a refund. You don't do that anymore, for obvious reasons. But we gave the customer the benefit of the doubt. But we had somebody in our store, and he didn't last too long, mercifully, that would tell you every single game out there was the best game on earth. And the rest of us were like, cringing in the background, like, don't do that. This game sucks. This game, you taking it off the shelf has moved that game more than anything else. And I would go out there, I would tell you whether or not a game sucked. There were plenty of examples. My favorite one of how much did a game suck was Superman 64. And God, the fond memories of me coming up with a sign-up sheet for the game, because we got to see the preview of it, and it was horrible. And I made two versions. One we were allowed to display, and one we were not allowed to display. One we displayed, had all the usual talking points. The talking points they wanted us to put. And this is like old days. This is mid '90s. And so for the one that we couldn't use, I used the classic Superman S, the shield that you find on his chest, and the letters HITTY after that. And I put in little statements that were not consumer friendly, certainly not advertising friendly, like graphics so bad it'll make your eyes bleed, worse than kryptonite, that type of stuff. So, yeah, those are good times. They wanted you to know your stuff. So imagine now in the earlier days, you're playing some of these old games. Oh yeah, you're buying Pac-Man. Well, Pac-Man had some goodies and had some not so goodies. We're going to include a non-console. So this is arcade versus a one-off. And this would be the Coleco Pac-Man. I'll actually switch it up right here. Let me give you the photo. Looks something like that. Of course, you can see it's picture number 12, as you can see in my little thing here. It is. It was neat. Now, did it look like Pac-Man? Well, of course, aesthetically, yeah. It had the classic black and yellow design. Had the marquee, and, had the side art, and then did a darn good job as far as bezel. Did it play like it? That's debatable. The object of the game, of course, just like in all the other versions that you play, you have to complete the maze by eating all the dots and avoiding the ghosts by doing so. Does it have little bonus things in the center of the box, the center of the maze, below the ghost box? Nope. Does it have the right scoring? Nope. but is it fun? That is one of the key elements. I've seen plenty of games where they do kind of miss the mark as far as accuracy of the arcade game, and of course they're going to because of technical limitations. The Atari console, the Atari cartridge, didn't have anywhere near the memory capacity of that of an arcade board. Of course, duh. But they were still fun. The fun factor. That's the key of the game. The games could... I love today's games, and I'm not going to go, yesteryear versus now. That's a different argument. That's a somewhat petty argument, in my opinion. Graphics, yay! Realistic, fantastic. Aesthetics, whoa, way, great. Storyline, yay! Okay, I'll give that. Is it fun? That's the killer. Is it fun? There are plenty of games that look just absolutely gorgeous, and I will have to admit, back in the mid-90s, one game that was beautiful to look at. It was a crowd pleaser. It even had somewhat of a storyline, although there wasn't really any dialogue to it. But it was boring as hell, and that would be missed. And I remember the Mac Envy, because it was a Macintosh game at first, and they ported it over to PC, even a couple of the consoles. My God, I was just like bored. I'd rather play a comparable game would be The Seventh Guest from Virgin Games. That was a good game. That was a lot of fun. Challenging. Good on puzzles. This one was a bit more abstract. Not to my liking. Alright, let's go ahead and go to the video player. Now, I played this last night. Like I said, I was giving up. I'm going to resort to this if the emulator is a crashable emulator. TurboGrafx right now is getting into that category. It is in that category. Because I can't get it to work now. Because I suck. Alright. Did I throw all the switches? I did not. That would be kind of a detrimental thing, wouldn't it? Yeah. Alright. Let's see, that'd be bad. I should say. Let's just get us started here. I gotta turn that down. Yeah. Turn that sucker down. That is deafening. Okay, start it one more time. The test sound, please. There we go. Okay, one more time. Okay, so this is what I have. This is they call it Revision 28 on the emulator. You can actually find this on MAME. This is emulated perfectly. I'm going to tell you that right now. This is exactly how you play it. This is exactly how it sounded. This is exactly how it looked. Dots were 10 points. The energizers were 50. Those are the red dots there on the side there. Ghosts, however, are wrong. First ghost is 100, 200, 400, and 800 instead of 2, 4, 6, and 2, 4, 8, and 16. 10,000 points gets you an extra life, and by the score and by the number of dots and all that kind of stuff, you'll go through many a maze just to get that 10,000 point. This did have a head-to-head play, which was kind of interesting. 2 joysticks, if you saw in the picture. Literally, it'd be the score is neutral score is 0, and how many more points you gain over your opponent, the difference of is the score. So, for example, if I have 50 points and you have 30 points, I have a net 20 point score, and you'll see an arrow with 20 as a score. Very interesting. Not sure why they made it that way, but why not? You think it'd be more... Well, it is head-to-head, as versus, as opposed to co-op. Whatever. There was also another game of this one. There was actually a different version of the game. And, let's see, what is it called here? It's called Eat and Run, thank you. I think I remember that. Eat and Run, there were only the 4 energizers. The ghosts were in the corners, kind of like if they were in scatter. You were in the ghost chamber. And what you would have to do is you'd have to dance around that board, that maze, as fast as you can, grab as many energizers as you can, and run back to the center. But the center wasn't always open. It would close sometimes, making it a bit more challenging. In order for that ghost box to open, you would actually have to eat at least one Energizer. And I did pretty good on that one. That was rather challenged. Very interesting diversion from the traditional gameplay. The one thing that my dad did not like about this, and considering how loud it was before I turned down the volume, you probably can guess. Just listen real quickly. He did not like that siren. And now, 40 years later, I look at it and say, you know what? You're right. But it had to have a siren. That's what, that's just the way it was. And as far as the game lore itself, what the siren is simply the ghosts. They're in attack mode, so they are effectively the siren. So hence, when you go into Energizer mode, they're scared. Just eat the dot. Nope, I'm waiting for him. That's right. So I'm halfway to my 10,000 point. I'm now in the third maze. A lot harder to get that extra life. You certainly well deserve it. I think they could have made it at 5,000 points or whatever like that. But again, simply the lack of dots. And you notice that the ghosts don't have any type of pattern whatsoever. They are completely random. They will go back and forth. They will move side to side. They will actually stand still to some degree. Much harder than the actual game itself. But I will give this, it is fun. It is a fun Pac-Man, and of course, it was cool to look at. You went to your best friend's bedroom and you saw that this was there. It's like, oh, cool. Yes, it was. Today's equivalent is like the My Arcade, or even the Arcade 1-Up, which is a bit more, accurate. See, he comes right out of the box. He does, doesn't he? Yep. Didn't waste no time. Yeah. Yep, that's when you clear the board. It's kind of like gambling, you know when you got what you got. And this is I couldn't believe this happened. I disappear off the board here. And this is a bona fide glitch, and you can see my score is now all over the place. And now my score is a paltry 320 points. So my chance now getting that extra life has just become bupkis. On a much harder maze, the Energizers don't last as long. Oh yeah. And being this is emulated, this is not simulated. This is an actual emulation. Yeah, that was a glitch in the game. See, look at that. I cleared the board with dots left over. I'll take it. I don't care. Oh, there were a couple of things you could do actually with the game. Donkey Kong had a neat little Easter egg. If you hit the joystick up while you turn on the machine, you'll see that all the sprites, or all the LED sprites, I should say, are lit. And if you start the game, you can play a somewhat normal game, or you can play a game where you have something like 10 lives. Very interesting. So, not sure if that was an accidental thing, or was that simply an Easter egg. Sometimes they'll leave Easter eggs like that in the game for the actual game testers, the Q&A people, or the QA people. Oh, Lord. And I'm all the way down to 3170. I lost count how many mazes this is. But I actually enjoy this one. I loved this version of Pac-Man. Beep. And my best score. And a Salt and Wound reminder. Game over. Certainly was. Certainly was. My goodness. Well, there you have it. That is Pac-Man. I'll say this. There aren't games like this anymore where they'll just simply, keep coming out with new versions or rehashing the old versions. I can think of a few off the top of my head. Mario is a damn good example of Nintendo successfully selling its mascot, its flagship, repeatedly over and over again. Pac-Man is another fine example of successfully doing so. Um, it is unbelievable what they have done with Pac-Man. Okay, now that's fixed. Excellent. But having played this just now, and of course, they still sell the stuff. Yes, that is mine. They sell all kinds of stuff, art even, and the various iterations of Pac-Man that are out there. They made the various plug and plays. I can think of 4 of them off the top of my head. One of the most recent ones is the actual sprite Pac-Man. You open it up, and it's a controller, and you hook it up to your television. It's battery operated, or you can plug it in with an adapter. Right there in that picture, there is my arcade sitting on top of my monitor too, with Inky and Pac-Man light behind it. And those 2 little things up there next to Pac-Man, those are candy dispensers. Those are actual candy. And the one closer to Pac-Man is the Japanese original. And I'm very, very happy that Namco has adopted the Midway North American art of Pac-Man with the side art, its look, in other words. What you see here back in the original days from Coleco, well, this micro arcade over here has the same North American look. And how he looked over the years. Of course, there's Ms. Pac-Man. Like I said, Ms. Pac-Man is a great game in its own right, but it was never made by Namco. It was made by, produced through Midway. Originally, again, it was Crazy Otto from MIT, and I think was it CCE made it. But the game lives on. The game is now, well into its 4th decade, and I think that's fantastic for any game to live as long as it has. Fantastic. I love it, and I continue to enjoy Pac-Man to this very day. Ironically, despite my name, Super Pac, and Super Pac is just simply Super with my initials, PAC. And as you follow me on Monday when I resume Crystallis, my character name is Pac. Everything I do is Pac. It's not my favorite game. Despite all this crap, this is not my favorite game. My favorite game of all time is Galaga. And I can't really honestly do a whole segment like this of arcade versus console, because I could go on. There was an Apple II version, there was a ColecoVision version, Game Gear version, a Neo Geo Pocket version. Anything that took an interchangeable cartridge, except of course with the Coleco arcade countertop. But the list goes on and on. Of course, they brought it back with Namco Museum back in the mid-90s on the PlayStation. And Namco Museum came out in several different versions over the years on many different consoles, even on Steam. So this character will live on forever, and I hope it does. It is one of the few things I've ever seen that lasts this long. That's not like sci-fi, it's not like Star Trek, it's not like Star Wars. It's a video game. It's just simply a video game. A video game that caught on, did wonderfully, and well, you can buy a brand new version of it in some form, even on this day. And then occasionally there will be an idiot like me. Oh, he'll build one himself. This has been Arcade vs. Console. I am Super Pac Jr. I will be back here on Monday evening, starting at 7 p.m. We will continue on with the role-playing of yesteryear. The game is Crystallis, and that's an old game from SNK, made for your Nintendo Entertainment System back in 1990. An early version of an action RPG. RPGs are a breed of their own. I've loved them before even Final Fantasy VII, which has been an introduction of RPGs for a lot of people. But considering how long I've been playing video games, it's kind of middle road for me, because there were plenty of examples prior to that for a couple of different consoles or so. Let's see, is there anyone on this particular doohickey thing that I can actually raid to? I want to give a shout out again to London Laughs. Thank you for being in chat today. And earlier today, JL the Boss 24 followed me. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. makes it worthwhile for me to do this. Whom can I raid? There's Yogg Sky. I wouldn't dare do that. I could raid with... How many people do I have? Both of my viewers. I think I'll do that to Dave. Ebon Dave. He is the husband to Lollipop Jai, who's out doing Yoggcast for the next 2 weeks, so he gets to stream on his own. How about that? So I think we're going to give him my 2 viewers in addition to his current 20. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time here on Super Fact Junior. Bye-bye. Have a good weekend.